All right, welcome to math. Today we're going to be going on and challenging ourselves with some two-step equations. Working on two-step equations today. So please get this down in your notes before moving on. Here's your warm-up. I want you to do one-step equations for number 1 and 2. And 3 and 4 are obviously order of operations. See if you can answer them correctly. Come back together. We'll see if you got them right. Here are the answers you should have gotten for 1 through 4. X is 15, Y is 8. For number 3, the first thing you should have done is 6 divided by 3. And then that gives you 2. And then 2 times 5 before you do 18 minus something, following order of operations. And for 4, first thing is obviously the parentheses. Then after that, you're left with 3 times 4 in that middle section. That needs to be done next because it's multiplication. Then you would do the 7 plus minus 2. And all the other stuff that comes with that. So that's the answer you should have gotten there. Okay. All right, so let's talk about solving two-step equations. We just did one-step equations in the warm-up. We've done one-step equations all year. We learned early in the year how to do one-step equations with whole numbers. Then we did one-step equations with fractions, with decimals, a lot of different ways. So today now, we're going to do two-step equations. So the biggest thing is you'd have to do more than one step. Duh. So let's say we're given this problem. 18 plus 3x equals 30. The first thing you have to do is you have to remove like terms. Okay? So remove like terms. That's basically what we're doing here. So as we can see, we can't do anything with 3x because no other problem within this scenario has a coefficient 3 and a variable of x. But we do know that we can swap 18 over to 30 pretty easily since they are the same thing. They're like terms. So the only way to get rid of a positive 18 is to do the opposite, or undo the addition by doing subtraction. So the only way to get rid of 18 is to subtract 18. So when we do that, these are gone. And over here, you have to do 30 minus 18, because what you do to one side, you got to do to the other. So this is gone, and 30 minus 18 leaves you with 12. Now from here, we've seen plenty of these problems where it says 3x equals 12. And now we just have to undo or get rid of the coefficient so we can get x alone. So this is multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication is division, which you can see. Now 3 divided by 3 cancels out to be 1x, or just x. And what you do to one side, do to the other. So 12 divided by 3 gives you 4. And that's how you answer it. Now remember, we learned when we first did these at the beginning of the year, or close to the beginning of the year, how do you check to see if 4 is correct? Plug that 4 back in for x. So then you're really left with 18 plus 3 times 4. I'm going to put parentheses around those. They need to equal 30. Does it? Well, 3 times 4 is 12. 18 plus 12, does that equal 30? It certainly does. So that's how you can check to see that, it's supposed to be a check mark, to see that you did that correctly. So have this example written down before we move on. We're going to do a couple more here before I have you do some on your own. All right, so here's another one where we got to solve for the variable. Now again, x divided by 3, you're looking at that going, well, there's no x on this side, so I can't do that yet. But I can do the minus 2. So how do you undo minus 2? Well, the opposite of subtraction is addition. So you add 2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So when we add 2 here, the negative 2 plus 2 gives you 0. So now there's nothing here. But on the other side, 1 plus 2 gives you 3. So now we're left with x divided by 3 equals 3. Well, how do we get rid of the division? Well, the opposite of division is multiply. So we multiply both sides by 3. So that cancels out over here. 3 over 3 gives you 1 whole, or just 1x, or just x. And 3 times 3 on this side gives us 9. So again, the way we can check is you put 9 in for here, and 9 divided by 3 would give you 3. 3 minus 2 is 1, so that's correct. You don't have to write this one down unless you think you need to. I would, because it's another type of problem. This is a division problem. I would write it down if I were you, but it's your choice. Here's another one. Now this one's a little tricky, so I want to show you how you can walk through this one. Probably a good one to put down in your notes. All right, so look at this as two different things. X plus 19 divided by 4. So we can't really do x plus 19 because it's still got a variable and a number next to it, but divided by 4 is all alone. How do you undo dividing though? You multiply. So if we multiply both sides by 4, if we divide, or we do 4 multiplied by 4 over here, that's actually 4 over 1 multiplied by 1 over 4. Those cancel out. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So that leaves you with 24. And now we're on the other side. We're just left with x plus 19. How do you get rid of plus 19? You subtract 19. So now we're left with x over here all alone. But if we subtracted 19 on this side, we got to subtract 19 over here. 24 minus 19 leaves you with 5. And again, we can check this work by just putting 5 in for x here. 19 plus 5 gives you 24. 24 divided by 4 indeed gives you 6. Again, your choice if you want to write this down or not. All right, I have 6 problems, and I'm going to want you to do all these in your notes. Now, you need to show your work, and if you don't practice showing your work here, you might forget when you do your quiz. So let me walk you through number 1 just one more time, and then you can do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on your own. So we can't do 3x yet, so the part we can do is get rid of the 8. So it's a positive 8, so you get rid of it by doing subtraction. And what you do to one side, you do to both sides. So now we're left with 3x on this side, and 26 minus 8 will give you 18. Now we got to get 3 away from the x, and that's multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And these cancel out, and you're just left with x equals, and 3 goes into 18 6 times, so your answer is 6. Again, you can check your work by putting 6 in for here and doing 3 times 6, which is 18. 18 plus 8 does give you 26. So x equals 6 is correct. Good luck on the rest. When you come back, I will show you how to get the answers. I'll show you my work. Good luck. All right, we're going to walk through these together now that you've done them. So for number 2, the first thing we can do is we can get rid of, you should have got rid of the positive 7 and subtracted 7. And when you subtract 7 from both sides, it's negative 21 minus 7, so it's actually a more negative number. If you used your calculator, you would have saw that pretty easily. So we're left with negative 28. And on the other side, we still have 4x. So get x alone, we got to divide by 4 to both sides. Now 4 goes into 28 7 times, but remember it's a negative and a positive, so the answer is negative 7. That's what you should have got. For number 3, we'll switch colors. For this one, the first thing we can get rid of is the minus 7, so we add 7. We add 7. And when you add 7 to both sides, this is just left with x divided by 4 equals 9. So how do we get rid of a divide by x over here? We multiply by 4. Those cancel out. What you do to one side, do to the other. And x is left with 36, because 9 times 4 is 36. So you should have gotten 36 there. Another thing I hope you're noticing is I'm circling every answer I get, so I know where it is among all the work. You're also noticing that even though I could probably do the first step in my head, I'm showing every step, because if you don't, that's when you make mistakes. These are still simple 2-step equations, and like I've said before, practice how you perform, and as the stuff gets harder throughout the years, you want to make sure you can do them by showing your work simply now so you can do them easier later. All right, number 4, we got to get rid of this minus 3, so let's add 3 to both sides. 8 plus 3 is 11 on the one side, and we're left with b divided by 5. We just did one like this. To get rid of division, we have to multiply. Multiply by 5 on that side, that's gone. Multiply by 5 on that side, and we're left with b equals 5 times 11 is 55. Okay, hopefully you're doing really well so far looking at your work. Back to red. All right, for number 5, we got to get rid of the positive 3 first, so that means we have to subtract by 3. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So 19 minus 3 gives us 16 on this side, And on this side, we have a negative 2y. Okay? So to get y alone, we have to divide by negative 2. That's gone, but what we do to one side, we do to the other. So we know that this answer is going to be negative because it's a positive and negative. 2 goes into 16 8 times. Better circle that. And finally, number 6. Let's see how you did here. So this one was a little tricky, so I hope you pay attention here. We have to get rid of a positive 4 to the other side, so we subtract 4. When we do minus 5, negative 5 minus 4, we get negative 9. Okay? Over here, those are gone. We're left with negative m. Well, that's really a negative 1 times m, so how do you get rid of a negative 1 times m? You divide by the negative 1 that you have on that side. Divide by negative 1 on that side, and those things should cancel out. The negatives are gone, and now it just says 9 equals m. Now, if you don't think that's correct, put 9 in for m and see what you get. 4 minus 9 will give you negative 5. That was probably the trickiest one out of all of them. So let's see, you had to do 5 on your own. If you got 4 of the 5 correct, or 5 out of the 5, come give me a high five. A lot of 5s there. All right, the last step of our lesson is, what does this look like in word problems? So let's work through this. Again, I'm showing you as writing an equation. You might find it a different way, but let's walk through this one so you can kind of know the proper way of doing it. Nancy saved $87 of her money that she made babysitting. She wants to buy CDs that cost $15 each, along with a set of headphones for $12 so she can listen to them. So how many CDs can she buy? Well, we first need to write a two-step equation. We know that one side is going to equal $87 because that's how much she has. From there, on the other side, we got to figure out what we can add together. We know that $12 is a fixed cost. That's not going to change. But we're going to have to add to that $15 times every number of CDs that she wants to buy. So our equation should say 15x plus 12 equals 87. Now, once you get the equation written, it's just like every single other problem we've done so far. So let's solve 15 times x plus 12 equals 87. And when we do that, first thing we can do is get rid of these like terms. So get rid of the plus 12 by subtracting 12 to both sides. Now you're left with 15x equals 87 minus 12, which is 75. How do you get rid of 15x? You divide. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. And we're left with 5. So going back to the original question, she has $87 saved. She buys her headphones. She buys $15 for every CD. How many CDs does that equal? That would be 5 CDs. And that's how you work through a word problem. If you want to write this one down, go ahead. Here's one I want you to do on your own. I'm going to kind of help you with solving this. All right, so it's a baseball game scenario. A group of you and 5 friends, or a group of 5 friends, I don't want to confuse you, are going to a baseball game. Now the tickets for the game cost $12 each, or 60 for the group. How do we get that? 12 times 5 gives you 60. So the group also wants to eat at the game, and the hot dogs cost $2.75 each, yum, and bottled water is $1.25 each. So the group has a total budget of $85, and that's going to include the cost of the tickets. If the group wants to buy the same number of hot dogs and bottles of water, how many can they afford to buy? Now, here's a couple things to help you to answer this. First, you can let n represent the number of hot dogs and the number of water bottles. So basically, $2.75 times n will represent the cost of hot dogs, and $1.25 n represents the number of bottles of water. So write out a verbal model, or write an equation, and then solve it. That's how you're going to do this. So go ahead and work on this. Come back when you think you got the right answer, and I will show you how I'm going to solve it using the equation that I'm going to write from this problem. But give it a shot on your own first. All right. So now that you've given it a shot, let's kind of go through this. Now, I gave you a little hint on the solution. So we know that we have $85 total to spend. So 85 equals fixed costs of $60 for the tickets, plus 275 times N for each hot dog, plus 125 N for each bottle of water. Now, here we can do two different things. First, look, those are like pairs too. They both have an N in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify this equation first by adding those together. And that should give us 4N. And then I'm going to add just the rest of this here. So because they both have an N, they're like terms. And you can add those like terms together to shorten it up and just say 275 plus $1.25. Since we know that they want to buy the same number of hot dogs and bottles of water so that no one feels left out. From here then, our next step is to get rid of that 60, because the 60 and the 85 now are like terms. So you subtract 60 from one side, and 60 minus 85 gives us $25 left over. So basically I have $25 to figure out the 4N. So we need to figure out if it costs $4 for each person to have a hot dog and a bottle of water, how many can they buy? We divide both sides by 4 because that's going to get us N alone. These cancel out. So 4 goes into 25 how many times? It goes in a little over 6 times. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So you're left with, you get 6 and then some change. So I'm going to say N equals 6 because you can't have a little extra. So how many hot dogs and bottles of water can they afford? They can afford 6, and that means that they can afford 6 hot dogs plus 6 bottles of water. Remember, this is one of those scenario kind of questions. You're not going to put the exact answer down because the exact answer isn't going to be what you can actually purchase. So if we actually did 4 into 25, we know that 25 divided by 4 is going to give you 6.25. You're not going to be able to go up to the cash register and say, excuse me, I'd like to buy 6.25 hot dogs and waters. They're probably going to be like, we can't do that. So that's how you come up with 6. All right, let's move on. So here is your box of thought. I want you to answer these. For number 2, I'll read it to you. It says, make a conjecture or a guess about how to solve an equation with more than 2 steps, such as an example like 3 times x plus 7 divided by 2. How do you think you would go about solving that? Come back when you're done. And here is your quizaroo. 5 questions. If you don't show me your work, I will send you back. Show me your work. That's it for me. We'll see you next time.